All right. So today we are going to talk about a few different things. We are on the buyer consult train here. We talked about the buyer agency contract the past two classes. Now moving into this, we are going to be going over a couple more things about buyer agency and then actually holding the buyer consult, which is where you're actually meeting with your client and talking to them about how this is going to work, how to prepare, what shopping for a home even looks like. If these are things, this is a time where you can really get all questions answered for them, because even if they don't say it and even if they've done it before, they are nervous, they are afraid. There is a root fear because people don't buy houses every day. Even if they last bought a house a couple of years ago, markets are always shifting and things are always changing. And you don't really get a chance to go over the changes and what to prepare for unless you have that consult. A lot of people like to skip the consult because it sounds so official and meetingy or salesy, and it's really not. You can do it so many different ways. I've done it over phone call. I've done it in a coffee shop. You can do it over Zoom. You can obviously host it at the office if you want to with slides. You could really make it as formal or informal as you want to. And as you grow your business, you're going to see how you'd like to host your own meetings. But really, it's just a time to have a conversation and make sure that they feel good about the process and get all questions out. They're going to have questions about pre-approvals and rates. Obviously, we don't go too deep into those, but we at least tell them who to talk to if they need somebody and how to prepare for that, what that will look like. We're going to talk to them about the market and different contingencies and how that works. I always like to go do a quick once over of the offer to purchase with them, just so that they know what to look for and what kind of different things we're going to be doing within that offer when we write it. So that I always say, I don't want the first time for you to see an offer to be when we're writing an offer. I want you to be prepared for it. So it's just a consult to get ready for it. So we'll go deeper into how to host one and different things you want to touch on. But first, it's that time of year right now. It's early September. And every August or so, every agent kind of feels like the market is crashing. No one's buying, no one's selling, nothing's going on. If they do have listings, they might not be selling. And it's because it's that weird transition time of year that we seem to find every year where everyone has so many other things going on. The last thing that they're thinking about is buying or selling a home. Not always the case, right? Of course, people buy and sell in September, but just historically, we kind of see this time of year, people get a little bit shaky or nervous or don't want to have anything happen before they start school. It just is always that season of change. Almost every Labor Day time period, people kind of come out of the woodwork. So I wanted to go over a few different things. This weekend, I had two past clients reach out, and one of them I first met probably 5-6 years ago. They were a referral from an agent in Madison. And the way that I got that referral was I happened to be sitting in the office, and another agent from Madison called our office and said, I have a Madison referral. They want to buy a Milwaukee home, and who wants it? I happened to be the only person sitting in the office that day. So there you go. Always worth it to be at the office, because you never know who's going to pop in or call the office phone. And the front desk person or director, they might walk around and say, hey, who can take this? And that's how that happened. So this particular client had a home in Madison. They were wanting to move to Milwaukee, and she ended up getting the itch to be an investor after we started talking investing. So since then, they've now bought a duplex almost probably every other year since then. So they bought a couple. And now they reached out this weekend, actually, Labor Day weekend. She was probably sitting on her phone talking homes, and her mother-in-law is now looking to also move to Milwaukee and buy a house near them. So they're going to be looking at a condo. She sent me a condo, and I just wanted to go over with you what kind of things I look for and how I reacted to that. So for that first one, we'll just dive right into it. And then we'll go into what the second one was. So it technically was 3 leads over the weekend: a listing, a purchase, and another purchase. So this is the purchase we're going to be talking about. So she texted me and said, and again, I'm going over this because this is real life stuff. Like, I can teach you how to write a contract. I can teach you how to, verbatim write amendments and how that works. But really, at the end of the day, what you guys want to know are, what do I do when somebody texts me and says, I want to know about this house? That's where we kind of freeze and go like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So I'm just looking for her email. So she sent an email and said that her mother-in-law is moving to the area that they bought in. They're interested in a condo on the lakefront or Cudahy or St. Francis, so that like South Milwaukee area. They would also consider smaller homes in the area. Can you help us with this? So I knew that I really didn't have time to dive into it at that time, which is okay, but you definitely want to respond right away. So right away, I said, hi, absolutely. I will look into this condo and get back to you on that. I'd be happy to help. And then I asked her who the purchaser would be. Because I know that they have just different retirement funds and things like that. They've bought cash in the past. So I wasn't sure if they would be buying for her or if the mother-in-law actually would be buying for herself. And she let me know that she would be the one purchasing. Well, that tells me that we need to talk lending and how she'll be purchasing. So now I know the kind of things that we need to address. I also know that the lender that they used in the past, I know who that is. So I'll probably refer them to the same one because I know I try to keep it within, if I know they used somebody, I'll try and keep it the same person because I know that this client is already comfortable with that person. And then they wanted to look into that condo. So I'm just going to show you. We'll go right into MLS and I'm literally just going to show you how I respond to this because this is real life stuff, right? But at the end of the day, remember, where did this client come from? This is a past client. Past clients are your best source of business in the future. They truly are. And the reason for that is because they already trust you. They know how you operate. They had a good experience with you. So this goes right back into the buyer consult. The more you set up a good experience for that client, past clients are like the gift that keeps on giving. They will never turn off if you keep nurturing them. If you keep making sure that there are touch points multiple times per year. If you use our KV course system, you're going to have touch points over 20 times per year just by setting them on an auto drip. They're getting every month different email campaign like home newsletters. And then they also get holiday emails. That's just stuff that happens automatically, not the stuff that our team actually does purposefully, like Packer magnets and Christmas cards. And that's all the basic stuff. Now, that's not talking if you do client appreciation parties and pop buys and there's so many different ways you can have touch points with your clients. And really the point of all of it is so that they don't forget you. Because remember that I think it was like 87% of people, according to the National Association of Realtors, would use their agent again, but only 12% remembers who they were. So don't live your first year in real estate over and over and over and over again. There's one way to do that, and that's forgetting about your clients and using like turning burn, like, okay, we closed, bye. The closing is really where the conversation begins, not ends. That closing table is really where you say like, hey, I had a great time with you. This was so fun. I know you're going to have a great time in your house, but this is not the last time you'll see me. In fact, this is really the beginning. I want to be your agent for life. I want to be a resource. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions about anything regarding the market. There are so many times that you're going to do things for your clients over the years when they, maybe you just want a connection to an agent in another state. Or I had a client who was a traveling nurse and wanted help because she didn't have time looking for an apartment in another city. There's things that you may not get paid for necessarily. However, you are a resource with expertise, and your value comes from the expertise that you have. So use it for your clients because those people are extra special and you want to make sure that you take care of them because in the future, when they think of real estate, they will think of you. And this needs to be in the back of your mind all the time. Whenever you are thinking about your client or whenever you're having a conversation with a client or run into them or they send you an email or whatever, take advantage of that. This is a time for you to shine. I've been able to get emails from clients who have, I had one client just last year who emailed me and said, can you send me comps for the condo that I'm in, which I had sold her maybe 4 or 5 years earlier. My taxes are going up and I want to fight them. So can you do what you can to send me a report about how low all the values of the condo are? So I did. However, I also said, I just want to let you know that, I was able to find, let's say most of the condos in her building had sold for 230, and they were trying to get her tax evaluation up to 250. I'm just saying numbers. I don't remember what it really was. And I said, I just want to let you know that I know you don't like this number because it makes your taxes go up, but I would list your house at 269 right now. And she was like, oh, really? I mean, I'm still going to fight my taxes with this report that you showed me with values of 230. The reason we were able to pull that report at 230 was because a lot of the listings in her building had been sold either, single party or for sale by owner, or had not very nice photos. But I said, honestly, if we staged this thing, used awesome video, virtual tour, and really showcase this, I think we could sell this for 269. Even though there are no comps in your building for that, I really think that your condo is worth that. So that should make you feel better at the end of the day. I didn't know what would come of that. She decided to list her condo, and I think we sold it. If it was 269, I think we sold it for 275. She was happy as pie. And then what did she do? She also purchased. So now I didn't expect that to go anywhere, but at the end of the day, I knew that running comps for tax purposes was not going to make me money. However, I was a resource to her. And in the future, who do you think she's going to use if she ever wants to sell the new house that she bought? Or maybe she wants to keep her house and buy another house. Whatever that looks like, your clients are clients for life. Okay, so just remember that. So the condo they want to look at, and I'm literally doing this in front of you. I have not looked into it before at all. So I know very little, but I really want to show you real life what this looks like. So I see we've got a horrible photo. Oh my goodness. 2 bed, 2 bath, 1,200 square foot condo. We can see the water, so that's awesome. Looks like it's on the 2nd floor, just based on the unit number. It's 254. We can see that this is it looks like it's a limited, let's see, 12-month condo fees, large balcony, accepted offer. Well, they did not get an accepted offer by then because we're still on market. It's been on the market for 121 days. The condo fees are going to be paid for this by the seller at closing. That's awesome. The condo is rented until June 2023. So that's obviously something I would want to tell the client. Great investment for someone seeking a condo that is already rented. So what that means is that this is a rentable condo. Somebody could buy it just to rent out to a tenant. So it could be an investment property. But I know it sounds like she wants to buy this for herself. You can move in after the lease, of course. So once this ends, the buyer could move in, or they could continue to rent it out to somebody. Let's see. We'll quick look at the photos. I always like to get an idea of what we've got going on. I can't even with these photos. Now we know why it's been on the market 121 days. Brooke, look at these photos.
Oh no. Not even any light. Oh.
So that just really sells it.
Beautiful. Nice amenities.
Yeah, the amenities are really neat. Oh my goodness. Well, we can see past the photos, and I always say to buyers when photos look like this is good for us. We can see past this, right? We'll still go look at it, of course, but really, this is why it's not selling. Okay, so I know
those are really good
key
condos. I
point
was
to this-
there a year or two ago.
Oh,
Had
it's
deals
a
on.
really pretty condo with an awesome location. You literally have a view of Lake Michigan. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And it's
I
right
just
on the
can't
bike
believe.
trail. And there's that clubhouse is really amazing.
Yeah, looks like there's a lot of amenities here. So this, despite the photos, it's a beautiful condo. So what I'm going to do is take the documents from the listing, and I'm going to save them so I can email them over to the client. So this is the exec summary. This is 4120 South Lake Drive, 254. Copy that address. Okay. We're going to have condition report or the addendum to the condition report. Okay. And then we've got the seller condition report. So with a condo, there's always an addendum to the condition report, just giving information about the association and who to contact, property manager, things like that. All right, I'm going to save those things, and I've got some key points up. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to send an email here. So yep, I've got her email. All right, so hello, Vicki. Great to hear from you this weekend. I am excited to help your mother I'm just gonna say, Steve's mom with her search. As promised, here is information about the condo you sent me. This is a great building with amazing amenities. So much potential. Here are some details. I'm going to say, don't mind the photos. It truly will be better in person. This is why we use professional photography. I always like to throw that in there because there's one reason I say things like that. And it's because someday I'm going to be selling their house and I want to make sure they know I would never make their listing look this way. Condo has been on the market over 120 days. Doesn't mean there is necessarily anything wrong with it that we know of. However, it could be due to the marketing photos. The photos are horrible. The home is rented until June 2023. So the new owner would take over that lease and can move in after that lease is up. I think it said seller. "12-month condo fees paid by seller at closing based on the rate on closing date." Seller is paying 12 months of association fees, I'm thinking, right? Yeah. No fees at time of closing. That's awesome. The condo has amenities such as a hot tub. I think it looked like it had a pool. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I see it had a gym. Yep. A pool, clubhouse, hot tub, gym, theater room. Okay, what else did we see? I always just want to make sure I give them the basics of it.
Bike trail. You can
talk about the bike trail.
You can make it to South Shore Bike Farmers Market and downtown very easy.
There we go. Thanks, Andy. All right, I think that's kind of the basics. Documentation regarding the condo is attached. Regarding the purchase, will she be financing? If so, we can connect her with a lender. And then when would you like to go check this condo out? Please reach out with questions. Thank you. I don't say, do you want to see the condo? I'm saying, when do you want to see the condo? Then I am going to attach these documents. And off we go. Beautiful. So there you go. And again, I know this seems like I don't know, not too exciting that I'm showing you sending an email, but I'm showing it to you so you can see real life how we're addressing this or how I would address this. So now I'm going to shoot her a text and just say, I just emailed you over information about the condo. Hey, Vicky. Just emailed over information about the condo. Looks amazing. Let me know what questions you have. Perfect. So that's one right there. Now, what I would do, because I now have a client that I know is interested in purchasing, and again, like totally out of the woodwork, right? I had no idea that there was something that they were looking at, but I'm always, reaching out regularly and touching base, and they respond to like our holiday emails, and she'll randomly inquire about like a duplex she might want to buy because I know she likes to buy duplexes. We always joke she's going to be the landlord of Milwaukee because she wants to take over like the UWM duplexes. I think she has like 2 or 3, but still, like that's exciting for her and she loves doing it. That's her retirement gig, is she wants to be a landlord. So by staying in touch over the years, that's why when she thought of real estate, she remembered me and recommended me, even though I've been with 3 different brokerages in the time that I've worked with them. But it doesn't matter. It did not matter to her. It doesn't matter what brokerage you're with to a client. All they care about is you staying in touch with them. You just want to make sure you have the tools in place to stay in touch with them. So that's a potential buyer. Now I would put them on my working client spreadsheet of probably hot, because I know that they're looking now and I want to make sure I stay in touch with them. Clients that are hot, I'm reaching out to regularly, like weekly, to see if they need anything and if they have any questions. So now they go on the spreadsheet to make sure I don't forget about them. Because if she never responds to my email, whose fault is it that she's not kept in touch with? It's mine. I'm the person who's in charge here. I'm the salesperson. So it's my job to make sure that she's responding to me. So there's times when you will, reach out and reach out and reach out, and they might not respond until they see something they like or until it works for them. So it's your job to stay in touch with them. The second one that I received was a client, and this one, I sold them their house. It was a for sale by owner. I can't believe we actually made it work. We saw this house on, I think, Facebook Marketplace. The woman didn't even give the address. She gave a couple, maybe like 2 pictures. And it's a gorgeous house in Brookfield. And the price that she had it at was like exceptionally low. So we were all like, this is really interesting. And I called the number and I got the seller's daughter, I think, who then directed me to the seller. The seller didn't want her name out there at all. And I'd been shopping with this particular buyer for like a year, and we were waiting to list her house because it was in Wauwatosa until we found something. So we found this house. I scheduled a showing, went in, we saw it. They fell in love with it. We knew that she had severely underpriced her home, but it was a for sale by owner and I represented the buyer, not the seller. So we wrote a full price offer, her full price, and we ended up having a home sale contingency. And even in the wild market that we've been in, she still accepted it. And I think I negotiated like a 2% buyer agent commission, which was fine. And we moved forward. That transaction was an absolute nightmare. And what I mean by that is the seller didn't have anybody representing her. So things that were normal to us, like negotiating inspection, like having an appraiser come through, like extending some deadlines because of inspection things that came up, a lot came up, she was very uncomfortable with and tried to end the transaction multiple times. And it goes to show you with for sale by owners, it's always a little extra challenging because you don't have a logical person giving advice to that seller. She feels like the world is against her because this buyer has representation and she doesn't, and that doesn't feel fair. Well, you get what you pay for, right? She didn't have any representation. She didn't have a listing agent to consult with. So it was quite the journey. And when we ended up closing, the buyer was like beyond happy, but she's a looky Lou. And for them, it was really important to have a pool. And this particular home did not really have room for a pool. However, they fell in love with the price more than anything. And they always kind of intended on selling it for a profit as soon as they found something that they loved. So that's kind of their situation. And she sent me something she really, really liked and said, hey, what's the story with this house? So I gave her what I knew about the home and about the subdivision. They were going to drive around the subdivision that weekend and see if they wanted to have a showing scheduled. Then she also asked, what would my house be worth now? Because we know that it was underpriced at the time. And now they've replaced windows, they updated bathrooms, new gutter guards, full electrical upgrades were the major improvements. She also said, also, would you wait to buy until interest rates come back down? So that was a great question. And I said, okay, in regards to waiting to buy, no, I would not wait to buy because of interest rates. And I'm not just saying that, I'm saying that because we anticipate home prices to continue to go up. We don't see them going down. They might go up more slowly, but they don't appear to be going backwards. Experts aren't saying that they're going to go down. So waiting for interest rates to drop, you're not going to outrun the way that the market is going up if you wait until interest rates drop. And the good thing is you can refinance at any time. So if they buy a house today and rates drop next year, they can refinance down to that lower rate. But that house is going to be worth more at that time. So they would have ended up lose money. If the reason for them to wait is only because of interest rates, no, that is not a reason to wait. So I explained that to her, and that's a question you guys are going to get a lot, especially when you're representing buyers. Interest rates are high. My parents said, it seems too high. You're going to have people in people's ear all the time saying rates are too high. This is too high. Home prices are too high. Wait for the market to crash. The market's probably not going to crash. And if we all sat and waited for a market to crash, we would never buy, right? There are a few people who predicted what happened in 2008, but not a whole lot, right? We can't just sit and wait for things to crash. The richest people in the world invest long-term over time regularly rather than just waiting for a market to crash. Of course, a lot of people got rich in 2008. That's wonderful, but you can't live your life just sitting and waiting for something to crash. You need to go ahead and do it. If someone wants to buy, there's no reason not to buy, really, in most markets. Even people who bought at the peak in 2007, their homes are already worth way more right now than they were then. So that in time, historically, things go up, right? Rates are going to fluctuate. They always do. Home prices increase. The market increases. So there really isn't a reason to wait if you need to buy something. And again, it's the best of both worlds. You can buy right now in a market that's not so seller crazy, right? Where sellers were so in charge like a year or two ago. And rates are, yes, a little bit higher, but you can refinance if they go down, when they go down, because they will go down at some point. Also, we are spoiled. We're so used to 2.5%, 3% interest rates that 6% sounds so insane, but it's really not. It's healthy for a market to ebb and flow. So buying at 6%, it's okay. There are people who bought at 18%. So those people are looking and saying, 6%, are you crazy? So just keep that in mind, that it's all relative. It's always relative. It's not a bad time to buy, especially if they plan on keeping their home for a very long time. If you're flipping, that's a whole different situation, but buying your family home, very different, or your primary home, I should say. So we're gonna look at her house. So I don't remember what her address is off the top of my head. So I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do here. I'm going to look that client up. I'm in KV Core. I'm gonna go into my Smart CRM, into my database, and I'm gonna look them up. My internet is being a little tricky. Hold on a sec. Okay, there we go. So typed in her name, clicked on the client, and if I go in here, I can see her hashtag is, for us in our team, we use the word past to know that they're a past client. They are somebody who has closed with us. She's been a buyer, she's been a seller, and on her team, she's connected to me. So that's kind of all these different hashtags that you can assign to a client. So when we send Christmas cards, we usually only send them to past clients. So when we filter by past, we get her. So I've got her email. It's also been a while since I emailed her. So and I'm going to go to profile details because like I said, I don't remember what her address is. She's at 3725 Stonebrook Court. And it's probably an MLS solely as a FSBO from back in the day. If you see this house, now you'll understand why they fell in love with the price. That house is gorgeous and it's at, it was sold for $414. Now, for some reason, when they entered it in MLS, because I think my office did it back in the day, it doesn't, the bathrooms do not look right. And there's nothing I can do to edit that now. However, I know that it was, I think 3.5 bath. Yes, maybe 2.5 bath. Either way. So I'm going to look on a map. I'm going to price their house or give them an approximate price of what I think is going on right now. So it's on the east side of Brookfield. It's by, I always remember Mary Cliff Lane as like this area. It's a really pretty subdivision in Brookfield off of Capitol. So I'm going to look in Capitol and Pilgrim area. And the subdivision is called, what's it called? Is it in here? No, because we didn't do an actual MLS listing. I guess it doesn't really matter. I was just curious. So if we go to quick search, and remember, never overprice a listing when you're doing this because someone might make a decision to list or not specifically because of what you tell them. So I'm going to go to single family sold in the past year. So I click this 9/6/2021. Okay, that's all I do. And then I am going to go to Capitol and Pilgrim right here. And there we see, this is that little lake that we were talking about. And they're on Stonebrook Court right here. It's a little cul-de-sac. So I'm going to look really in this area and be careful when you do this, you guys, to make sure that you're not accidentally getting a wrong subdivision in there. I'm very familiar with this subdivision, so I know that it's not kind of changing. But sometimes you'll see like a road like this, and over here is one subdivision and over here is another. But I'm pretty comfortable with this, so I know what we're looking at. There are some that are right on that body of water or like across from it. They're priced a little higher, so you just need to keep that in mind. I'm going to look at the listings and I'm going to sort descending. So I see here 626 is the highest price in the past year that has sold in this neighborhood. That's really helpful to know. So if we look, it's gorgeous. The specs here, 3,400 square feet, 4 bed, 3 bath. So it's a little bit bigger. I also know that this basement is not finished. So that's really something to remember here. It listed for $585 and it sold pretty quickly for $626. Okay. And I want to see if the basement's finished. Got a big backyard. So the basement's not perfect, but it is finished. It's finished space. Okay. We've got another one here. It's in the Stonewood subdivision. That must be the name. 4 bed, 3.5 bath. So it's a little bit bigger as well. Not super updated. Definitely could use some updates. Okay. There's that body of water that I was talking about that everyone has access to in the neighborhood. 4 bed, 3.5 bath. So it's sort of similar. It's a little bit bigger. So we're kind of between like high fives, right? 550. And I've seen their house. I would say pretty similar to this, where it's that mid-range. It's not super, super, super updated HGTV, but it's very nice. So here we've got 550, 5-bed, 3-bath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these comps that we have here. Okay. I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to get rid of some that I know, like this. I'm going to get rid of like the ranches, because I don't want to compare ranches to what we've got here. So some of these just don't really make sense, because I know we're doing like more colonial style, which these houses start to become if you get out of the range. So this kind of begins probably more doable. Okay, I'm going to hit CMA, use selected results because I got rid of some. We're going to do a full CMA. Okay, go to next. Auto populate from an existing listing. So I'm going to go 1720770. 1720770. Remember that bathroom was incorrect, so we're going to want to manually update that here. Full bath, I think there were 2. Half bath, 1. Estimated square footage. They've got estimated total square feet, so that's good. Any specific thing? I'm going to say Stonebrook subdivision. Technically, it does have water access. What do some of these others? I'm just curious how others in the neighborhood. We have one neighbor who just sold. 511 for 2.5. So super, super similar comp. And water features, I just wanted to see what it says. So sometimes you use old listings to get an idea. I don't think they really say much, because technically it's not on the water, but if you're in the subdivision, you have access to go to the water. Oh, look how not updated this is. It's a good sign. It's at 511. So they're already at least making 100 grand on this, which is pretty amazing. Taxes, we've got that. Year built, garage spaces. Okay, we're going to hit next. That bathroom thing is the one thing I wanted to clean up. Those are all the comps that we went over. Obviously, I want to make sure that the neighbor is in there. 3710, of course it is, as it should be. We're going to keep going through. It gives you a summary. So low 405, high 626, recommend 485. So I'm going to download this, and then I'm going to save it. And what I'm probably going to do is start a loop so that I remember what information that I had sent over to the client. That's really important. You want to make sure that you remember what you send them so you can go back to it. And it's thinking right now about downloading my CMA. I'm also going to go to RPR because I'm always curious what RPR says. So there's my CMA, okay, that I'm going to send to her. And I always will go deeper into it with her. 3725, Stonebrook, CMA, MLS. This helps me remember what document it's from. So I'm going to email that over. And then we've got 3725, Stonebrook Court, Brookfield. It was 3725, right? Yep. Let's see what she comes up with. There's our house. Okay. RVM 559, they're saying. So they're between 520 and 599. That's awesome. So I'm going to create a report. Seller's report. I like that one. And when you have time, go through and play with all the different reports that MLS has to give. Hey, Katie. Hope you had a great weekend. As promised, attached are 2 market analysis reports I put together based on current market for your home. You have done some amazing work to the house, and there is so much potential here. I'm excited to walk through it and see all your changes. I ran 2 reports which greatly differ, but wanted to show you the range. I will be able to be more accurate once I physically walk through the home, but wanted to let you know we are seeing a range between, and we obviously know, remember our highest was at 626, so we know we're not going higher than that. But our MLS report gave us, wherever it went, or no, RPR report. If we go back, it's thinking about the report right now. It will ding once it's ready. Is between 520 and 599. So I'm going to tell her between low 500s to mid 500s. I always say that because I don't want to go 599 just yet, because I don't know until I get there where we're going to be, but I know we're going to be between probably like early 5s and mid 5s, right? Like we very well might list at like 549.9. Okay. With all the work you have done, it will definitely pay off. I highly suggest talking with Sean, that's her lender, about what you're thinking to confirm if you can purchase without selling. The market has shifted a bit, so we want to most likely list first to protect you, so we don't, or so we protect you because homes are not selling overnight like they were. It can happen, but I cannot make any promises. The market is still strong. We just want to make sure you are prepared. We can talk more about that. Regarding the home you want to look at, what did you think of the neighborhood? Let me know what your availability is this week to see it. Please reach out with questions. Thank you. Okay. And remember, we have 1 CMA attached. Here's our other CMA. Lots of waiting, isn't there? And now what you can also do is in KV Core, you can write notes about what they've been inquiring about, houses they like, so that in the future you can always go back and say, oh yeah, that's the house that they liked. Use your tools. This is RPR. So I'm going to email both of them over to her. It's going to send us a link. That's fine. Okay. There we go. I'm going to send that over. All right, there we go. So now I'm also going to send her a text. Hello, just emailed over comps for your home. Let me know your thoughts. So I always like to text when I email because I know not everyone, is looking at their email all the time. Okay. So I know that that was maybe a little painful to watch and slow and whatever, but that is real life information about what to do when a client reaches out to you. We've got 2 potential purchases and a listing. They take time to run those reports and make sure you're diligent, but you don't want to skip any steps. I cannot stress this enough. You can't skip steps when it comes to this because you want to make sure you are there, available, and on top of it for your client. That can never stop. That cannot stop when you're a 10-year veteran, a 20-year veteran. You will continue to grow your business with past clients if you really maintain that service level and make sure you're going above and beyond for them. So that's why I take the time like that I do. And I'm going to dive deeper into all this with them when I speak, but I wanted to make sure I promised them this weekend that on Tuesday after the holiday weekend, I would get them these reports. And I thought, perfect, this is a great teaching moment. So I'll do it in front of you. Okay, with that, we are going to move into a little bit of buyer agency myths. So I just wanted to go over these. I'm going to get rid of all my CMAs here because one of my favorite ones to go over is this one in particular, because it's something that people often think is the case. So urban legend number 1, being a buyer's agent means automatic procuring cause. That is false. So what it says here, in terms of procuring cause, the pressing question is who caused the buyer to make the offer that resulted in the sale of the property? Just because you have buyer agency does not mean you were physically there showing them homes. So there's no one act that determines procuring cause. It can only be answered by a full and knowledgeable consideration of all the facts of the case. A broker who can show an uninterrupted series of events that resulted in the successful transaction with the actual buyer will be the procuring cause of the sale. A buyer agency agreement does not supersede or dictate procuring cause. Okay, that's really important to know. Just because you have a client who signed buyer agency with you, that does not mean you automatically get commission on anything that they buy. Often arbitration panels will consider the actions of the broker that caused the purchaser to reasonably conclude that the broker had lost interest or disengaged from the transaction, otherwise known as abandonment. So pay attention to your clients. Do not sign buyer agency with a client if you do not intend to work with your client. So that's one of my favorite myths that I just wanted to touch on because it's something that a lot of people don't realize, and it's really, really important to know. Buyer agency is really there to protect you and your client. It's not there just to say, oh, when you buy a house, I get a commission. No, you actually have to work for your commission. You don't have to be a buyer agent to work with a buyer when the property's a FSBO. So that is false. So the reason because of that, I want to touch on that is because you cannot have a transaction in which there is not agency with somebody. There has to be an agency agreement somewhere. So if there is not a buyer agency agreement or a listing contract, then the licensee cannot be involved with the transaction. So if it is a for sale by owner, you have to have buyer agency with the buyer. If it's a single party listing, you can have a listing contract with the seller, okay? But you can't not have one or the other. And then this other one I wanted to touch on, a buyer cannot fire a buyer agent. That is also a myth. I am sorry, but you can be fired. Buyers have the power to revoke a buyer agency contract at any time. This is because an agency contract, such as the WB36, is a personal service contract based upon a special relationship of trust and confidence in the broker. When a buyer directs a broker to stop searching for a property, the broker must obey the instructions. In the WB36, the buyer can terminate only by delivery of written notice. So right there, you guys, you can be fired. So just because you had somebody sign a buyer agency does not mean they are stuck with you. So I always reassure a client of this as well. It's a fiduciary contract. I have to work in your best interest. And if you tell me that you don't want to work with me anymore, well, that's what's in your best interest because that's what you want. I can't force somebody to work with me. At the end of the day, do you really want anyone to be forced to work with you anyway? That sounds like a horrible way to work with somebody. So if you're just not meshing or the client doesn't, isn't really liking the whole ordeal or doesn't want to buy anymore or just straight up doesn't like you, you can definitely refer them to somebody else that you think would be a better fit. Not every personality works with every personality, and that is okay. But what's not okay is ignoring your client, being rude to your client, not always asking yourself, is this in the best interest of my client? If the answer is no, don't do it, don't say it, don't send it. Is this in the best interest of my client? Always ask yourself that. Okay, so those are some buyer agency myths I wanted to go over with you. Then we've got an entire folder of buyer consult information that's really important to know. So in here, we've got the buyer needs analysis. This is really helpful for you to go through. And it's nice to have a couple of these printed all the time. So if you have a phone call with them, or as you're going through the buyer consult, you can keep this handwritten and write it down. You also can make this fillable in .loop and share it with your clients. So that's something that is available to you. This is going to be shareable in .loop, so you can pop it into your buyer folder and go from there. That's really, really helpful, because what I like to do before a buyer consult is share this with the client, and then I get an idea of what they're looking for and what is important to them. So really, really helpful. In .loop, I'll quick show it to you. It's actually called the buyer information sheet. So if you go into templates and go into our master documents, buyer, right here. This is a fillable document that you can share with them and they can fill out. So many pieces of information here, but this populates right into your loop, which is really helpful, and you can share it with them before you ever have a consult with them. Makes you look really professional that you have that all ready to go. The buyer consult flyer example. So again, this is something you can make pretty in Canva. This is just an example of what to expect, what's going to happen, right? What is the current market like? What are the forms? What is financing? How do we do showings? How do I schedule a showing? How does a buyer agent get paid, right? Is it something the buyer pays? Does the seller pay? How does that work? So this kind of is just a nice overview of things you want to go over. I always like to say, at the end of a buyer consult, like, hey, I just want to give you a quick overview of MLS and make sure that you feel really good about it. So that way they know how to use it. What that yellow C looks like, because when they look at this, they have no idea what they're looking at when they have this list of properties. So I always kind of go through and say, okay, here's where you find like the key points of a listing in MLS. Beds and baths are here, square footage is over here, year built, how long it's been on the market, the school district information. That's all stuff that they want to know and is really important for them. If it has a yellow C, if you see a yellow C, this is the hot sheet, so nothing probably has a yellow C just yet. It's going to show right here, and it means that it's under contract. It has an accepted offer. So we may not want to pay attention to those unless it's like your absolute dream house and you're willing to wait for it. How does earnest money work? How does home inspection work? You want to make sure that, hey, when you make an offer, there's 3 different ways that a seller can respond. They can accept, they can reject, or they can counter our offer. And here's what that looks like. How does earnest money work? Hey, by the way, you don't just need money ready to go at closing. You're going to need money twice up front in the transaction. The first one is earnest money, typically about 1% of the offer price. It's good faith money. I always say, ensuring that you're not going to skip town, take their home off the market and hold them hostage. 1%. So if it's a $500,000 house, earnest money is going to be around $5,000. And the buyer gets to choose how much it's going to be. So we always say the higher the earnest money, the stronger your offer is, because you're showing that you're not going anywhere. You're willing to risk that money if for some reason you wanted to breach the contract or get out of the contract, not using a contingency. Speaking of contingencies, we talk about the inspection contingency, the appraisal contingency, and the financing contingency. Any others that are within the transaction as well. Like if there's a well or a septic or certain tests that you want to have. But inspection, usually around, I'm actually going to change that probably to $600. So this is usually around $600 for a home inspection. And the buyer pays that. You always want to say that up front in the buyer consult, because if your buyer is not ready for these 2 things, that can be a very sad moment for them. Yay, you got an accepted offer. By the way, here's where you send your $5,000 check. What $5,000 check? If that ever happens, it's one person's fault. It is your fault for not diving into that with the buyer. How does appraisal work? Do they order the appraisal? No, if there is an appraisal that's going to happen, typically the lender is going to order that if you're financing. If they're paying cash or don't have a financing contingency, the buyer might order an independent appraisal. So it just depends. But one thing I do want to note is contingencies don't necessarily mean they're not having those things. And what I mean by that is the financing and the appraisal contingency. We'll dive deeper into this when we read the offer together. Just because you have a financing contingency or don't have a financing contingency does not mean the buyer is not financing. The contingency just means that they want the protection in the event that they can no longer do that, like they lose their job, they can get out of the offer and get their earnest money back. That's what the contingency is for. My offer is contingent upon me getting financing, or my offer is not contingent upon me getting financing, meaning if my loan doesn't go through, I'm still on the hook to buy the house. So those are two different things. And in the offer, it actually talks about if the buyer waives financing, and seller still has to comply and cooperate with the buyer's appraisal process. Meaning the buyer might still take out a loan. Even though they have the cash to buy the house, they might still take out a loan and they might still have to have an appraisal. Even if they do have those things, the offer is not contingent upon the financing happening or not happening, or the appraisal meeting a specific price, but the financing, the lender might still want it to be appraised, if that makes sense. But the buyer is saying, I'm going to buy it whether it appraises or not. Let me know if you have any questions on that, but it's really important, especially as a tactic. If the buyer has a good amount of money in a retirement account, stocks, or something somewhere that they can show, they may be able to write a non-contingent offer, but still finance, especially if they feel good about their financing. That's really, really common. We do that all the time. And not something bad to do by any means. So this kind of goes over those key points of the buyer consult. So you can take this, make it pretty, and share that with your client. Here's another buyer consult outline, all the things that you are going to go over in your buyer consult. So I like to have this kind of in front of me during a consult, especially on your first few. It helps you remember what kind of things you're going to be going over with the client. So this talks about make sure the buyer has that needs analysis filled out, or we could talk about the buyer information sheet prior to the meeting, or have them fill it out at the beginning of the meeting. The packet, you want to have the buyer agency contract, the offer to purchase. I usually highlight the key points like price, earnest money, the contingencies, closing date, so they can get used to looking at one. NAR buyer agency chart. That's right here. This gives them a quick overview of what buyer agency is, the duties that you owe to everyone, your customers, and then the duties you owe to the buyer as your client. Remember, when we went through the buyer agency contract, we went through those duties. This is a really nice, consolidated, pretty way of looking at those duties that's different than just looking at the contract. So that's kind of nice. Buyer consult flyer, which there's one in here that you can definitely use. I would highly recommend making your own in Canva. FAQs from buyers, so frequently asked questions. That is in here, and I can go over that with you. And then info about yourself and contact info. So this together all makes your buyer packet. If you need help, just come to us. We're happy to, in our marketing department, make one for you if you need. That's got your information, your logo, all that sort of thing. But you can definitely pull in the beginning from this stuff, and Canva is the easiest free way to make things look beautiful. You want to cover their 5 must-haves. I always like to talk about their must-haves and remind them that your 5 must-haves will evolve and they will change. Just know, I always tell them, seeing houses is like doing your homework, because sometimes they'll say, I'm so sorry, I'm dragging you to all these houses. Never make them feel bad about that. I always say, oh my gosh, like, you need to see houses. I loved it. This is the fun part of my job, is seeing houses, right? It's better than being behind a desk, writing contracts, negotiating. Seeing houses with you is my favorite thing to do. So never hesitate to send me a house to look at, because for you, that's your homework. You need to see houses before you even know what you like. You might on your 5 must-haves write an acre lot, and then you actually go see acre lots and you're like, oh, that's a lot to mow. I want a half of an acre. Great. Now we know we can adjust the 5 must-haves. So very rarely does somebody buy what they originally say on their 5 must-haves. You would be shocked. I looked at lake homes with a client for like 6 months, and the home they bought was not on a lake, nor near water at all. Their must-haves changed, but we kept revisiting them and going through them. And by the end of it, when I showed them that last house that they ended up buying, I knew when we walked into that house, that was the one, because it had their 5 must-haves, their new 5 must-haves, not the one from 6 months earlier or a year, whatever it was. So the saying, buyers are liars, it's not true. Buyers are not liars. Buyer agents don't know how to work with buyers. That's the problem, is buyer agents don't ask enough questions. They're not really that consultant for their clients. So make sure that's never going to be you guys here at Abundance, because you're always going to encourage them to revisit their 5 must-haves, adjust them, talk through them, and never make them feel bad for changing their mind or thinking, oh man, I know I've been asking you to show me 4-bedroom houses, but we really need 4 bedrooms plus a finished basement with like a den or a potential bedroom. Things change because a lot of us don't even know what we're looking for until we're in houses. I know for me and you and other agents, it's so easy to talk about what is in a home and different features of a home. But especially for a first-time buyer, when they walk into a house and they had no idea what house shopping even was, and the only houses they'd ever been in were their own house and other people's houses, but they never like shopped for a home, they don't know anything, and that is not their fault. So it takes you consulting them, helping them know the pros and cons and what they're looking for in that house. So don't be afraid to continually revisit those 5 must-haves. It makes your job a lot easier too, because it helps you say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, you just texted me over this house. This is great, but your 5 must-haves have this, this, and this house you sent me does not have this, this, and this. And sometimes, actually very often, they'll go, oh, we didn't realize that. Thank you for letting us know. We don't want to see it now. You just saved yourself like an hour and a half of time of getting ready, driving, going to the showing, then walking in and going, oh, they're expecting you to vet the houses before you take them into it. So don't be afraid to say, hey, you told me having a bar in the basement was really, really important to you. This house doesn't have that. It has the capability to put one in based on the space that I see. And they might go, oh yeah, we're okay putting our own in, or whatever it may be. But think outside the box and make sure if there's a must-have, like, hey, we really want a pool. This house doesn't have a pool, but the backyard looks pretty big and flat. We can look into the possibility of you having a pool there. And then they might say, oh, that's okay, because it sometimes can be harder to find that unicorn. You might need to find the ability for them to make that unicorn, like fencing in their yard, putting a pool in, having a playground in the back, wanting the yard to be big enough to build a hockey rink or a tennis court. Like, who knows what it could be, but it's your job to vet these houses and really dive into them. Call the listing agent, ask questions, call the municipality, call the city, ask questions to know if the things that a buyer wants to do at the home are doable. That's your job. You're really the representative for the buyer. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just opening doors. The offer process overview. I always talk about how long the offer process takes, typically 30 to 45 days from accepted offer to close. And here's what goes on in the middle of that. I always remind them, hey, after inspection, it's kind of like a lull for a week or two where not a whole lot happens. Of course, we're still going to update you every week and tell you what's going to happen, but there isn't a whole lot that happens after inspection up until closing, because now it's kind of the lender's job to get their stuff done. They, of course, might ask you for documentation. So the quicker you get that to them, the quicker your loan will be approved. So make sure to take all that stuff really, really seriously. But you really want to make sure that you go over just what that offer process will look like. And as we actually dive into the offer to purchase contract, you'll have a better idea of what that will look like. Buyer agent versus seller agent. So we talked about that. When you're a buyer agent, you have buyer agency, MLS how-to. I always like to look at the MLS with them. Booming questions, next steps. Right away in that buyer consult, if you're in a meeting, you are setting a time to go see homes in that meeting. Do not leave that meeting without a time set up to go see homes. Even if there's nothing right now that you want to see, let's say, hey, let's just block this time off in our calendar. Next Thursday at 4 p.m. that's going to be our time to go see houses. So I'm going to work on sending you some houses that you may want to see. You send me some, and we'll put together a list. It could be this week, next, whatever it might be. Houses might be gone, of course, but never leave an appointment without another appointment set. A showing's a different story. Sometimes you're in a showing and you don't necessarily have another appointment set or another showing. But when you're in that buyer consult, in that meeting, set up a time to get together next at a showing. And you might say, hey, we might not find anything, but at least we have this time set aside that we know we're going to go see houses together, especially when they're brand new and they need to see like 5 before they even can open their eyes and know what they're looking at. And market update. I always talk about what's going on in the markets, what the inventory rate is and what that's looking like, all that good stuff. All right, we're going to dive back into this. I also have FAQs in here and a video. So the video that we're looking at right now, it's going to be within this class. And then there's another one as well. So this is more of an actual presentation that I did where you can actually watch a presentation and you can, if you want to, create something just like this and show this to your clients. But it's up to you. It's not loading right now. It's up to you if you want that to really look like an actual presentation or if you want it to look more like a conversation. In the beginning, I recommend and here's just some FAQs for you. In the beginning, I do recommend having a presentation because it allows you to have something to refer to so you don't forget to go over something. Nothing worse than when you leave a meeting and you're like, oh, I totally forgot to talk about this or do that. It can change over into something more verbal and communicative in the future, but I do recommend having a presentation in the beginning just to keep yourself on track so you don't forget to talk about certain things. So your homework is to watch that video, the buyer consult video, and then let me know if you have any questions. Once you watch the buyer consult video, you'll have a good idea like how to structure that meeting and then be prepared to let me know what questions you have afterwards. There we go. We are right on time. Of course, if you have questions, let me know. I'm going to send this video out as well. And next week, our class will be showings and showing etiquette. How to have a showing, how to schedule a showing, what to say in a showing, what not to say in a showing, common objections in a showing. Remember, objections always root from fear. And really just good practice on having a showing. Now that you're actually stepping foot into other people's houses, it's a big responsibility, right? You have keys into someone's home. There's a lot that goes into that, and you want to make sure you're ethical and practicing good etiquette. So we're going to go over that next time. Have a good week. Let me know if you have questions.